Time to review the new album by Cryptopsy called An Insatiable Violence. We're going to ask the question, do they still have it? I'll be honest with you, I'm fairly new to the band. I started listening to them 2 years ago when they released their last album called As Gomorrah Burns. But I enjoyed that one, and I've also been listening to a lot of technical death metal since then. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite albums so far this year are from that same genre. But with that being said, I'm going to start with some history. I'm not going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to go back to a time when they did something kind of strange. Back in 2008, the band Cryptopsy alienated their fans by releasing an album called The Undisputed King, which was more of a deathcore album and included more prominent and simple breakdowns, clean vocals by new vocalist Matt Magachi, and a keyboardist named Maggie Durand. This was a big change from the band that was known to have possibly invented tech death with their classic album None So Vile back in 1996. Then in 2012, they released a self-titled album, which was a return to their classic death metal or classic tech death sound. And then they disappeared for 11 years. Well, not really. They released 2 EPs in 2015 and 2018, but it was 11 long years before they released another full-length studio album, which was As Gomorrah Burns. It was an album that I reviewed back when it came out. Now they have a follow-up just 2 years later called An Insatiable Violence, which is the subject matter of today's video. The album was released on June 20th, 2025 through Century Media. They are continuing their signature technical death metal sound on this album. They don't want to take any chances by changing their sound, as they now know it was a mistake what they did back in 2008. I would even say this is almost like a continuation of what they did on As Gomorrah Burns. In general, the album is very aggressive and violent, but they still know how to add some melody to their sound. This is not an easy band to get into, so it's not for the casual metal fan, but at the same time, it can still be enjoyed by anyone if they give it a chance. The album has a lineup which includes Matt Magachi on vocals, Christian Donaldson on guitars, Oliver Ali Pinard on bass, and Flo Monier on drums. The album is a concept album about the addictive nature of social media. Vocalist Matt Magachi had a dream about a person being tortured by a machine that they had built. So this dream became the metaphor for humanity's toxic relationship with online platforms. They were also influenced by authors like J.G. Ballard and filmmaker David Cronenberg, who have both created works that explore the dark side of technology. Some of the topics on the songs include mukbang culture in the song The Nimis Adoration, child influencers in Dead Eyes Replete, and doom scrolling in Embrace the Nihility. The latter also has a guest appearance by former Cryptopsy vocalist Mike DiSalvo. As for the artwork, it was created by the late Martin Lacroix, another former Cryptopsy vocalist. But now it's time for me to give you my thoughts. So I'll be talking about the songs now. It's a fairly short album, just 8 songs, 33 minutes long. Songs are about 3 to 5 minutes long. The album just takes off with Nim's Adoration with the screams, blast beats, and death metal style riffs. Matt has a very deep guttural vocal style, but he can let out some harsh screams. Song's rhythm is also constantly changing, with tempos getting seemingly faster and slower within the same song. Matt also has a way of changing his vocal style from the deep guttural to the screams right in the middle of any particular verse. But then, from out of nowhere, there's this melodic guitar solo from Christian Donaldson, and you can also hear Ali's bass playing some licks in this section. So it might sound like madness, but after you listen a few times, you can tell it is a controlled madness. And all this took place in about 4 minutes, and it's just the first song. So let's go into the next one. The next song is called Until There Is Nothing Left. It begins like the first song with lots of aggression and speed. The song is filled with blast beats and tremolo-picked guitar riffs. However, there are still some twists and turns, as there are points of the song where they just do some straightforward chugging, and there's a cool bass guitar solo in the middle of the song, so that's another plus. The bass guitar does not get buried behind the guitars, which is sometimes the case with metal bands. The bass notes come in and out of the song, so that's another plus. In addition, there's another melodic solo, so it appears that they are focusing more on the melody when it comes to their solos. It goes into the next track called Dead Eyes Replete, which begins like the two tracks that preceded it with lots of speed and aggression. As you can see, there's kind of a pattern here. But let me tell you that they will have some weird intros coming up later on in the album. I believe they put the more straightforward technical death metal tracks in the front half of the album. Nonetheless, it's a good song and has lots of rapid fire guitar riffs that come at you like John J. Rambo in the jungle with a machine gun. And the drumming is very intense. The song is filled with blast beats. And towards the end of the song, they do some of that heavy chugging where they play some simple guitar riffs as a way to break from the technicality. This brings us to the fourth song, where they begin with lots of speed and aggression. They continue with the deep guttural vocals and rapid-fire drum beats. Matt has a way of going from his deep death growls to harsh screams in these songs. There's a little variety in the guitar playing here, as I heard a few pinch harmonics as well as those chuggy riffs. The drumming is very intense and it hits as hard as Chuck Norris. I also thought the song has more density and atmosphere, so that was another plus on the album. Now at this point on the album, it's officially the second half. Here's where they start to do some different stuff. The song is called The Art of Emptiness. It has some darker, almost spoken vocals and a slower intro, but that does not mean that they are adding a little variety, as I also noticed that the riffs sounded closer to black metal, but in general, the song still has that Cryptopsy song structure. It has that same technical death metal sound. I guess some of the guitar riffs sound more like traditional death metal. They bring in this melodic solo that has been absent in the last few tracks. The drumming is still very intense. They added more of those heavy chugging riffs in here as well. The sound is heavy. It almost sounds like Godzilla getting ready to destroy Tokyo. Then we get into The Great Deception with track number 6, and you might feel like you have been deceived as they begin with this classical guitar intro with a clean tone, but they start to sound more like death metal. The only difference is that they focused more on the atmosphere rather than the speed. They also add in some slow pummeling guitar riffs that sound like the Incredible Hulk smashing things, as well as some heavy and brutal screams to go along with the death growls. They added in another one of those melodic solos, which was kind of short, but still added to the experience. Then there's the song Embrace the Nihility. Then there's the song Embrace the Nihility, and this one also has a very different sounding intro, which was kind of more atmospheric. It took some time to breathe. At this point in the album, they're adding in a lot more twists and turns. Instead of just going for speed and aggression, there's more chugging, different things going on. But don't worry, it's still classic Cryptopsy. They're not changing their sound. They're just adding these little nuances that I tried to pick up after listening a few times. The final song is called Malicious Needs. This one sounds like the songs that were on the front half of the album, as they're bringing the album full circle. It just takes off right from the start. Although there are some interesting things they're doing by playing stop-start guitar riffs, they seem to be getting very technical on this track, as some of these guitar riffs sound like they're coming from another world. They're just very technical and alien-like. They're also doubling down on the pinch harmonics where they do something they don't do much on the album. And I think I picked up more of that on this song. This also has some cool guitar riffs. Sounds like they're firing off these machine gun rounds. Then about 4 minutes into the song, they start playing very dense guitar riffs that sounded more like black metal. Add to the fact that the vocals were more of those goblin screams and made it sound more like black metal. It was kind of like in that vein. This part of the song sounds like somebody screaming in despair as they're spiraling into the darkness. I thought it's a really cool way to end the album, because the last thing you hear are these very eerie and ominous sounds where you don't know if they're lost in space or deep in a cave, but it was a cool outro. Overall, it was a very good technical death metal album. The only negative was that some of the songs in the beginning of the album felt like they were bleeding into each other, but other than that, you're getting what you expect. It's full-on technical death metal. They're not giving you anything you wouldn't expect to hear. I mean, there were these little nuances that they added to some of the songs, but mostly on the second half. But it wasn't like they're going in these drastic different directions or anything like that. I like it. My score will be an 8 out of 10. I think it's on par with the last one. Not better, not worse, but just as good. I think the band has been on a roll these last few albums. So those are my thoughts. Check out my review of the previous album from 2023, As Gomorrah Burns. I'll stick it right there. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Please give this video a like. It helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe if you're not already. I do rock and metal reviews, rankings, and more. Thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one.